So there is a new yarn of historical revisionism being spun by the woke intelligentsia, where they are trying to now claim that disco music was killed off as a result of a conspiracy carried out by white supremacists. I am not kidding. This is an actual idea, an actual narrative that people are trying to promulgate. I was going to do a video on how utterly stupid and ridiculous that is, but this piece of information was dropped in my lap, and I think it bears more relevant commentary to what we're discussing right now. And that is, I was just informed that Chris Chan's next hearing is July 28th. And that is extremely significant because July 28th is 3 days before the anniversary of Chris's incarceration. Chris cannot be held, currently, cannot be held for longer than 1 year because he is currently charged with a misdemeanor crime, the maximum penalty for which is 1 year incarceration. So at that date, August 1st, he will have officially been in prison 1 year, which means that at the July 28th hearing, they're going to have to do one of two things. Either they're going to have to turn him loose on time served, or they're going to have to pursue felony charges. Neither one of those bode well for Chris and are not outcomes that should be hoped for by anyone who, like me, is hoping for a humanitarian resolution to the Chris Chan saga. As I've said before, I'm certainly not white knighting for Chris. He has done a horrible thing. He needs to be punished for it, and he is unquestionably a danger to himself and others. He needs to be in assisted living, some kind of assisted living. That is where he needs to be. He needs to be taken care of by qualified professionals every day, and hopefully, finally, removed from any kind of contact with the trolls or his fan base or the internet or anything like that, so that the Chris Chan phenomenon can finally die off. And I obviously there will always be a discussion, a historical discussion of Chris Chan and all of that. I'm talking about the ongoing drama can finally have a resolution. So anyway, so this does not bode well, because that means that chances are either we see the beginning of the homeless saga or the beginning of the prison saga, and Chris will not survive either one. Chances are between the two, the homeless saga will result in most likely couch surfing from ween to ween, and the prison saga will most likely result in Chris being turned into the block toy. Now, if he goes to prison, he'll probably be put in PC or protective custody, which protective custody is reserved for people like sex offenders, notorious gang members, police informants, things like that. People that could not, for whatever reason, could not survive in the general population. They put them in protective custody. So that is probably where Chris would go. Nevertheless, prison is not going to be good for him, and it's not going to be good for a resolution to the ongoing Chris Chan saga, because people will still be able to write him letters. And if he is already going batty in solitary confinement at or 23-hour-a-day solitary confinement in a regular jail, prison is going to be infinitely worse. So there is that. But I wonder if again, I'm not a legal scholar. I know a thing or two about law and how the legal process works. I know a little bit about these things, mainly because I worked for 2 years as a police dispatcher, and so I just picked up a lot of information about how these things work. But chances are, if I had to look at it from a strategy standpoint, my guess would be that the judge probably set that July 28th date as a way of telling the prosecution either put up or shut up. Either come to me with a compelling argument justifying why this guy should be moved up to felony court, or let him out on time, or we're going to let him out on time served. That's my guess. I would imagine that's what's going on. I have no way of proving that. I thought about one thing, by the way, which is in a previous video, I had said it would be really great if somebody could find out, from one of these people that's corresponding with Chris, could find out some information about what's going on in court. As I say that, I kind of actually retract that, because as I think about it, I don't really know about the legality of that. And I don't want to put Chris in a position where he's having even more charges tacked on, like some kind of contempt of court charge added to it. And I don't want to put the person corresponding with him in some kind of legal jeopardy either. So I say that 'cause I just don't know. There could be some sort of there could be some sort of legal clamp that's been put on it. And I wonder, though, I wonder, as quiet as Chris has been about what goes on in the courtrooms and all of his letters, I wonder if he has not been, my thinking is like maybe somebody got through to him and they probably said something like, look, if you want to ever see Branchland again, if you ever want to go home to the Sonichu Temple, shut up about the legal proceedings. Don't tell anyone anything. I feel like that's probably what's happened, is somebody probably scared him quiet that way. And it's if that's the case, that's rather sad, because obviously they've had to manipulate him, because I would imagine whoever told him that already knows that he will never see Branchland again, at least not as a resident. And so that is sad, that's unfortunate, but that may have been what's happened to keep Chris quiet. One of my commenters was asking if maybe Chris Chan wants a trial by jury. I would imagine, it seems like he seems to think that he would be vindicated in court, which is nonsense, obviously. But I've been, for research on my Chris Chan project I'm working on, I've been watching a lot of stuff, and the Gibby channel has a really good series explaining, summarizing all of the Sonichu comics, because in preparation for doing this, I tried to sit down and read the Sonichu comics, and they are almost completely incomprehensible nonsense gibberish. I mean, it's absolutely raving lunacy. So Gibby has done a good job of sitting down and actually summarizing what goes on in each of the issues. And what's interesting, I noticed something about Chris that I think gets overlooked in the way he thinks and his thought processes, that I think a lot of people don't appreciate, because they're probably still evaluating Chris as a neurotypical individual. Like, why would a neurotypical non-autistic person take the courses of action that Chris is taking? And for that reason, they infer that maybe he's arrogant and stuck up and that sort of thing, or egotistical or something like that. But join me on something, because interestingly, in Gibby's narrative about the Sonichu comics, he comes across the origin of the dimensional merge idea, and it's very interesting. Chris has always been getting, there are a lot of recurring things that people have been trying to get across to Chris, like things he needs to understand. And one of those things has been the copyright law surrounding Sonichu, and the way Sonichu uses not just Pokemon and Sonic the Hedgehog, but many other properties, just incorporates all these other properties, and that he's trying to build actual characters that he's selling based on all of these properties that, are putting him potentially in the realm of copyright infringement. And amazingly, the origin of the dimensional merge concept comes from a copyright disclaimer notice that Chris included in one of the Sonichu issues, where he says that, pardon me, I feel like I clear my throat so much that it's only a matter of time before one of my viewers writes in with, like, some weird holistic New Age remedy they found for, clearing up esophageal blockage or something. Anyway, the thing is, so the origin of the dimensional merge, it's interesting. It's it is this idea, it's a legal argument or it has its origins as a legal argument that Chris came up with to try to get around copyright law, where he makes this argument that because there's a multiverse where all things exist, there is therefore a universe, a dimension where Sonichu or where Sonic the Hedgehog and Pikachu are real functioning sentient beings, and being that as the case, it is unlawful to put them into it's unlawful to enslave them by applying copyright law to them, which is just, I mean, it's almost, that is almost like nonsense on the level of high art. I mean, that is extraordinary that you would get, that someone would go to that level to avoid dealing with reality. And the thing is, you have to understand, Chris is functioning on the level of about an 8-year-old. And we have all dealt with a child at some point that lies to you, and they start trying to lie to you, and they kind of start grinning because they think they're telling you something really clever, even though it's nonsense. And they start telling you a story, they start lying to you, and the lie keeps getting more and more ridiculous and more outlandish as they go, because they think if they can tell you this wild, their assumption is if they're able to tell you a wild, elaborate story, then you'll just, the more elaborate the story gets, the more believable it gets in their mind, when in fact the opposite is true. And so that's the level of functionality that Chris has. And I really do think that Chris is operating on that level, and that's how, and it's interesting to me that that's how the dimensional merge originated. It originated as a means for Chris to try to explain away accusations of copyright infringement. And it's so interesting because what we are watching with Chris is somebody who creates just an increasingly elaborate series of just increasingly elaborate series of nonsensical beliefs that separate him from reality. And he's so utterly committed to this refusal to confront any kind of reality that he has literally convinced himself that he's going to be pulled across dimensions into a magical realm where Quickville is real and all of that shit. And as exasperating as it is to deal with someone who really and truly thinks like that, try to remember that at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is, you would not hold it again if an 8-year-old boy was coming up with something that elaborate to avoid dealing with reality, to avoid dealing with a very harsh reality like what Chris has to deal with, you would probably be sympathetic towards them. Now, the only way that there can ever be any possible positive outcome for Chris is if he does a complete about-face from all of that. If he lets go of his delusional fantasy world that he has erected to keep from confronting reality. That's the only hope for Chris. Sadly, I don't think that that's something that's ever going to come to pass, which is why he needs to be in a group home. Anyway, 5 months certainly gives me time to finish my epic Chris Chan project. So I think tentatively I'll have the release tentatively set for July 28th, because I think I can hit that window. 5 months should be more than enough time. Anyway, so we'll see where that goes. But those are my thoughts, and we'll see what happens.